Today we have a very special collab for you all today because this is a subject that's been brewing, especially on the far right side. So make sure you guys hit that like button, subscribe button, and share button so more people can get this information, because we have with us returning guests. Our good brother Black Logic is in the building as we break down DEI, what it is and how it is being used against Black people. Black Logic, how you doing?
I'm doing wonderful, brother. Thanks for having me again. I appreciate it.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. I'm glad we were able to finally get together again so we can discuss these topics and things like that, because a lot of people might not understand the severity of what is really going on with the attack of DEI. And I definitely wanted to do this collab with you again because we did a similar one, which I will put in the description below if you guys haven't seen it. We did a similar one on affirmative action, which is really like a sibling to DEI in
Absolutely.
principle. So before we get started, is there what have you been hearing about DEI?
I mean, I guess when you look at DEI, it gives kind of the appearance of inclusivity, but the data, the details, when you look up certain charts and reports, it states that Black Americans are still vastly underrepresented in leadership positions throughout America and all the Fortune 500 companies or the large companies itself. So this is looking at it from a business standpoint. We're still far behind in DEI, and I know we're going to get there a little bit later. DEI never assisted or supported or benefit Black folk in any way or kind. Maybe on a very micro, very minute, it helped one or two Black people, you know what I'm saying? So there's a lot to be said about it.
Yes. Let's start off, if you guys don't know, let's start off with the actual definition of DEI, and then we can go into it. So this is the definition of DEI. It's DEI stands for diversity, equity, and inclusion. All right. It's an umbrella term for programs, policies, and strategies and practices that implement a company's mission to create and sustain a diverse, equitable, and inclusive environment that respects and accommodates every employee's ethnicity and sexual orientation. So, off face value, to be very honest with you, DEI is not like a negative principle.
Right.
Off of that value is not a negative principle. And the thing is that what I find very interesting, we're going to look at this also as well too. One of the key details you saw in the definition was the fact that it did not say specifically Black. It said ethnic identity. Black people are not the only ethnic identity in this country, and sexual orientation or gender identity, which includes white folks.
Absolutely.
I want to show briefly another definition on CNN. CNN had this definition. Let me this off the screen. CNN had this definition. It says, what is DEI? CNN interviewed 7 DEI experts and industry leaders and asked each to define diversity, equity, and inclusion. Although their response varied slightly, most had a shared vision for what constitutes DEI. Diversity is embracing the differences among everyone brings to the table, whether it's someone's race, age, ethnicity, religion, gender, sexual orientation, physical ability, or other aspect of social identity. So let's stop right there. The key definition when they say diversity, equity, and inclusion, diversity, when they say race, which Black people are not the only different race,
Correct.
age, ethnicity, religion, gender and sexual orientation, and physical ability. That means people who are disabled.
So they're talking about everybody.
Yeah. Which, to be very clear with you, and I'm sure you can agree with this and you can speak on this, besides race, white people can easily fit into really all of these other categories.
Absolutely.
So really their issue is with black people, because when you hear it, you hear the particular issue and they frame it in a sense of this is giving black people an unfair advantage over white folks.
The same way they did with affirmative action.
Exactly. Which affirmative action, to get to the definition of affirmative action was not exclusively to black people.
Absolutely not. It never, and that it actually never stated black folk.
Yeah. Why don't you get tell the audience really about affirmative action?
Can you pop that definition up for me?
Yes, yeah. All right, here we go, right here.
So affirmative, the Britannica, you guys see. In the United States, an effective effort to improve employment or educational opportunity for members of minority groups and for women. So basically, that's stating that it's for Asians, Hispanics, Native Americans, Pacific Islanders, and white women. So it's pretty much going to benefit everybody, supposedly on paper, except for white men. But even with affirmative action, we've seen other groups come over here, either legal or illegal, and get jobs and contracts over foundational Black Americans. So we understand that affirmative action or neither DEI has truly helped us, even when you look at, the reports and the percentages.
Yes. And what's interesting is they say and women.
And women.
So you all know when they speak about women and they just say women, by default, they mean white women.
Absolutely.
Who statistically benefit more than any other demographic of people with affirmative action. And it's always been used as a weapon against the qualifications and the merit of black people in school, in work, in any form, any program, or anything. It's always been used as, well, the black people are only here because of affirmative action. And now they have, because the Supreme Court has essentially stripped affirmative action or the obligation of affirmative action. So now they turned affirmative action into DEI. The same energy they used with affirmative action, they just converted that into DEI.
It's funny you should say that. I saw a TikTok video where a black guy was talking about, reparations. He was making comments about how the government owes Black Americans, and then the video cut, and then a white guy jumped in and said, what else do you want? You had affirmative action, and now you got DEI. And it was weird because once again, they believe that these legislations, these terms will actually target towards black folk. No, we're the ones who got these terms to be put up and to help other groups. Yeah, we definitely push affirmative action. We definitely somehow push DEI, but none of this benefited black folk at the same level and same rate as the other groups. It just hasn't. Did you know that Indian Americans are the richest group of Americans next to Jewish folks?
Okay. I didn't know that statistic.
Yeah, because when you look at the Asian demographics, you have all these Asian different subsets: Chinese, Korean, Vietnamese, etc., and then Indian folk. And out of them, Indian folk are the richest people. How do they get all the tech jobs? How do they get all the call center jobs? Right, they got some of the low end skill jobs as well as the high end skill when it comes to computer programming and things of that nature. It was through the same programs our ancestors and our mothers and fathers fought for, whether it be affirmative action or DEI.
That's true. That's a good point you bring up. The fact that DEI, and we can put this down, and as we chop it up, DEI really, all of these programs, every other group of people who benefit from it really need to be thanking FBA for all of that stuff, because before America had it to where they could just openly discriminate against any non-white ethnic group. And
Correct.
all of these other ethnic groups were kind of like, well, staying in their lane. And mine, there's like, well, this is just the way the world works, and I'm just going to stay in my lane. It was really through FBAs and our fight for some type of equity in society that led to the programs like affirmative action and or policies like affirmative action and all of these things being created in the first place, that all of these other people benefit from. Because prior to that, America was able to really openly, just openly discriminate against any non-white people. It wasn't until black people started fighting and saying, okay, your company is 99% white because you guys are discriminating against every qualified black person. You say you need to be qualified. They go to school, college, get a degree, get the certificate, but you don't hire them. So that's because you have anti-black policy. Even Donald Trump didn't want people in his hotels.
Absolutely not.
So these are the steps that we were able to look at and say, okay, this is anti-blackness. You guys are claiming that you can't have policies based off of race, but you guys do have policies based off of race. So through and we're being very brief with the details. We're just giving you an overall summary of the history. But through that's where the policies of, okay, well, we can't openly discriminate against non-white people came from. That's where that came from.
No, that's a good point. There's something I want to point out here. You can just pop that up for me.
Okay.
Is that you said something very prominent and very powerful, how we can't just openly discriminate against black folks. So we need some laws, we need some policies, we need some regulations in order to curtail or to change the narrative of us being racist.
Mm-hmm.
So this is something I did not know exists until I went through it. So I had to pop this up working for corporate America. The 3 most popular interventions make firms less diverse, not more, because managers resist strong arming. For instance, testing job applicants hurts women and minorities, but not because they perform poorly. Mm-hmm. They don't perform poorly. It's not because of that. Hiring managers don't always test everyone. White men often get a pass and don't interpret results consistently. So they don't even have statistics for white men. They're not even taking these job tests. There's some of these, like they may do a personality test or may do a knowledge test. I've went through some of these tests where they're tests to see if you are if you have the knowledge base to be to be beneficial for the business, to make sure you're qualified for that position. And as you can tell here, when it came to job tests, black men scored lower than everybody else. Right. But again, it stated that it's not that they perform poorly, and compared to white men, they're not even being tested. Then another key point is that black men were being tested more than everybody else, as well as black women. If you look at it, we were being tested more so than every other group, with the exception, I think, with Asian women. But it's crazy.
That is. And it also goes to show the micromanaging of black people. Something that is brought up often is there's such a stigma against black people that anytime you see the usual suspects, they see a black person, it's, well, you only got in because of DEI and you only got in because of DEI. But the truth of the matter is, and I'm so glad that you brought that statistic up, brother, is the truth of the matter is the fact that when black people are in these positions, 9 times out of 10, they are way more qualified than all of their non-black counterparts.
Right.
They have to over excel in their work performance and their qualifications and all of the things that their non-black counterparts have to. And I'm so very glad that you brought that statistic up, because I don't think a lot of people think of it that way. You don't even know how much better they're doing in comparison to white men, because white men are not being tested. White men are just
Absolutely.
getting their position assigned to them, and they, well, we're just going to leave them alone. But everybody else gets checked under this microphone, this magnifying glass. Everybody gets
Correct.
looked at with this magnifying glass, and everybody else gets micromanaged, especially black folk. Everybody else gets micromanaged, but white people don't at all. So for them to just assume that, well, if you're white, you, of course you worked hard and are qualified for the job. You don't actually know how poor they are at these jobs, because they're not being checked.
I think something else with the statistics that I found is that black men were being tested more than everyone else, more than black women, more than Asians, more than Hispanics, of course, more than whites. And what's significant about that is if I test 50 black men and I only test 10 white men, and out of that 50, 35 didn't perform well. Out of this 10, only one didn't perform well. Who percentage is going to be higher given the take of how many people they test, a sample group versus a smaller group? There's no correlation there.
Yeah.
So even the numbers that they're stating that black men were just simply tested more. So of course we have a larger sample size. So the more we do good, the more we do bad is in our favor. But of course they take the worst of it. Compared to a smaller sample group, we look like we're basically dumber than everybody else. Yeah. I'm telling you, this is kind of reminds me of that guy, I forgot his name, who basically stated because black people have smaller heads, thus we're less intelligent and we will score lower on the IQ test than any other race. Just because of the size of our heads, because we don't contain big brains.
Which
is just pushing another stereotype, basically.
And so, scientifically speaking, that has been so
absolutely
debunked.
False.
That's been so debunked. But you make a good point, and that's one of the things that I bring up often when we talk about statistics, because you'll have the usual suspects, the suspected white supremacists. You'll have those.
Correct.
They'll be all like, well, hold on, the statistics say that white IQ is what. Okay, the statistics say that, but the thing is that, like you bring up, is that unless you have a decent sample size to be able to calculate them both, if you have a super large sample size of black people, there's going to be more black people that underperform. If you only have a few white people and the few
selected
white people underperform, and a good point. And they only have to take the test one time, and you giving the black people 5 different tests. You know what I'm saying? Then the foundation of your study is off.
It's fraudulent.
So they have these skewed studies.
I was going to say very quickly, who created the test? Who created it?
Question.
So, I mean, if me and you created a test for black folk, I guarantee white folk won't do as well. The basic arithmetic, English and things of that nature, but there could be some other elements to that that's cultural, or that we just inherently know, or we attain that information by being in our environment, thus compared to a test that they're giving us. So I always look at things through a microscope, because it seems as though it's always more than what it really is, especially in white supremacy.
Yeah, you make a good point. So a lot of these statistics, and I'm glad you were able to bring those things up, a lot of these statistics are very skewed against black people.
Absolutely.
And they're there to justify discrimination. They're there to justify discrimination. They're there to say, well, hold on, you can't say that we're not hiring black people, or our percentage of black people is low because of racism. It's just because black people just tend not to be as qualified as white people. And then
That's
we
true.
have these statistics that they botched because of the studies that they made. And the statistics verify the fact that white people just tend to be better leaders or better in management, or you know what I'm saying. But it's based off of skewed data because the data came from a biased source.
One of them think tanks, white supremacist think tanks.
Yes.
And I think another factor too, and a lot of times when I give statistics, I go to reputable sources. Like that statistic is from the Harvard Business Review, a law school. And I usually do a lot of government websites because they're like, oh, that's a liberal source, or that's a conservative, or that's a all lives matter. You know, people always have excuses when you're giving statistics. So I tend to very strongly go to your Pew Research or Brookings Institutes, you know, Harvard, reputable places where people really can't argue the study, because that's what people love to do. They like to argue statistics when you're pointing out blatant and clear racism and discriminatory practices that once again deprive black people of the same opportunities that so-called affirmative action was supposed to survive, to provide, as well as DEI, which when you look at the statistics unbiasedly, you notice that there was a lot of racist and discriminatory practices going on, even with those laws in place. And look who they benefited.
That's a very good point. And this is why I feel like this was such a good video for us to make, because this is so very similar to us discussing affirmative action. We did, for the audience who might not have seen it, when the Supreme Court made their ruling on affirmative action last year, me and brother Black Logic did a video on the actual statistics of affirmative action, because the narrative is the fact that black people are getting into Ivy League colleges and black people are underqualified in comparison to the Asian students, and the Asians are being overlooked despite their superior qualifications. They're being overlooked because affirmative action forces Ivy League colleges to accept black people. But when you look at the all of the factors, not just the cherry picked ones, all of the factors, you see that's not the case at all. It's not the case whatsoever. So this was a good video for us to make, because like I said earlier, the DEI, the concept of DEI, I don't know if DEI is like a policy or if it's just like an actual term that they use.
I think it was policies that businesses adopted because of the push of equality.
So is it like an actual written policy, or is it just a term for the inclusive policies?
I know any business I work with, they had literally a DEI representative or a DEI person. I've even been to ones where they had DEI directors, where they had a whole DEI section.
Okay.
When I used to work at Capital One, Amazon. I used to work at a lot of big businesses, and they would literally have people who was in charge of DEI.
Okay. All right. So really, DEI is a sibling to affirmative action, because when you break down the definitions, is really this very similar definition.
Is very similar. And if you don't mind, pop me this one last point up for me here, because I pointed this out before. Civil rights are legal protections and guarantees of equal opportunity regardless of race, religion, or characteristics. What does it sound like? It sounds just like affirmative action, and affirmative action sounds just like DEI.
Yeah.
We didn't get civil rights. We were still suppressed and oppressed. We didn't get affirmative action, and we sure are not receiving DEI that's been very significant for our benefit. So when you look at these three things, we've been literally fighting and protesting for these particular things, having black lawyers to go up and to the court system and try to get these things implemented, and they're implemented, haven't benefited us at all, because it's not targeted. It says minorities or disadvantaged groups or marginalized communities, etc.
Yeah, you're absolutely correct. And this is why I'm so glad culturally, I am so very glad culturally that we have divorced ourselves from certain terms, such as black and brown, such as minority, such as even people of color, all of these things, because
African
we have
American.
good one, exactly, because we have started to realize that these terms include other people, and these terms are vague enough to include other people who should not qualify and who actually are hindrance in our progression. Because when we say people of color, well, Jose, he's a people of color, and then Mr. Juan is a
Absolutely.
people of color, and then you know what I'm saying, and Nikki Haley is a people of color, and Vivek Ramaswamy is a people of color.
Yep.
So and they're very different people with very different histories and very different agendas. You know, even when we use the term African American, you know what
Uh-oh.
I'm saying? There's some people be all like, well, hold on now I'm a third generation Jamaican, so I am an American. My dad was an American, so I'm technically or not a Jamaican, like a Haitian, for a better example. Why would I not be considered an African American? Elon Musk, a lot of the point that Elon Musk was an
It's
African
African
American,
American. Absolutely.
you know.
I say this many a times when we're talking about the labeling, especially with the term African American. Why is it that this is our nation, this is our country? Now, we may not have any reinforcements. We got, but nonetheless, why we don't associate ourselves with that term is because neither does any other black group outside of Africa do. Jamaicans don't say I'm African Jamaica. Caribbeans don't say I'm African Caribbean. Haitians don't say I'm African Haitian. They just say I'm Haitian. I'm Jamaican. I'm this and that. So why can't we say that we are foundational Black Americans? Why we can't say that? Like, Africa is an entire continent. It's not one nation. It's over 50-something countries. So for us to say I'm African, what country are you from? Then what tribe you from? What region you from? All these other questions. No, my family has been here from since 1526 and prior. So with that being said, we are a different tribe outside of Africa, just as all these other groups. So again, we have a different culture, even though I keep hearing Black Americans talking about we don't have a culture. The only thing you have to do is know a little bit of your history. Learn about innovators and inventors and people who've been doctors and lawyers and built own towns. How about this? Built a damn country. So that I don't even want to go on a rant, brother. That kind of gets me heated a little bit.
And so you know, audience, we actually did a video about like somewhat speaking on this culture, about the difference between us and our culture. And like our good brother asked the question, why should we not be able to identify with one? Now we will go off on a whole nother that's a whole nother subject, but the fact of the matter is, he makes a good point. This is our nation. This is just as much our nation as Jamaica is the nation of the Jamaicans.
Correct.
So we have to identify with, like you said, not a country, a continent.
Right.
As if, you know, we came from this continent. How did we come from this continent when we built a country? By definition, we should come from the country we built. Like, that just makes sense.
That only makes sense. There was no country before us. And then when you look at these so-called African countries, they are shells of themselves. They are speaking, like, I just found out when I went to Kenya. I just came back from Kenya recently, and I didn't know that Swahili was like a mixture of 3 languages. It's like Portuguese in there. There's some Arabic in there. There's some native African language in there. So I thought Swahili or Swahili was this original language. So when you look at the regions, the landmass, the different tribes, a lot of these are new tribes. They haven't been around like 1,000 years. They've been around maybe 200 years or something like that. So trying to trace your roots back, you'll find out that most of us are from West Africa. But like for me, when I looked at my genealogy and my DNA, it was like, oh, you're part Nigerian, you're part Ghanaian, you're part Senegalese, you're part Ivory Coast. I'm a foundational Black American.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? I'm a foundational Black American because all these other people that come over here, they know exactly who and what they are to a certain extent. Okay, to a certain extent, because a lot of their history has been lost. We probably have more records of our own history than a lot of these other people do. That's why they come over here with like not knowing their original birthdays sometimes, the older group. But yeah, I told you I get fired up about that because I've had people on a lot of my social media talking about I hate myself or I hate my lineage because I'm not recognizing Africa by saying I'm not an African American. I did a short over in TikTok and people ate that up. I'm just like, I don't really respond to the trolls, but every now and again, just for, shits and giggles. So.
Yeah. Sometimes it's good engagement. It's good engagement, I wanted to bring up this article, and I thought that this was very interesting because we have Florida's anti-black supervillain, none other than DeSantis.
Ron DeSantis.
Yeah, Ron DeSantis. That's a better word for him, if I call him a him. But the NAACP urges students, which is really black students, urges student athletes to reconsider Florida colleges after state eliminates DEI. And if we know about DeSantis has had DeSantis's claim to fame is quote unquote anti-woke. That's his claim to fame, which is really, and woke is another term, which is really a euphemism for black people. Is really it by definition, it's not supposed to, the way they say, well, woke just means anything that's super progressive, but they only use it when they're attacking black people. So that's really his thing. So let's
Ron DeSantis.
Yes.
Oh, go ahead, brother. I'm sorry.
Let's look into this and let's see what we have here. It says black student athletes. See, I said it was black. Black student athletes should reconsider attending public colleges and universities in Florida, the NAACP said in a letter to NCAA President Charlie Baker on Monday. The letter was in response to the University of Florida and other state schools that have eliminated their diversity, equity, and inclusion programs. It was also addressed to current and prospective student athletes. So these are student athletes that are in football or basketball or are on their way to being in football or basketball.
You know what's funny about this, though? I'm just laughing as you're reading because if the NAACP Coon Patrol think that black athletes are going to stop going to Florida to play football, they'll be a fool. One, they're getting full scholarships. You're not going to tell me that I'm going to go to Colorado and pay to go to school where I have a full scholarship right here. That's number one. And DEI never helped black athletes to get into schools because they want us. What are they talking about?
One of my things about the NAACP, now that you bring this up, the NAACP is shameless because what are you all doing to solve this problem? If you're saying that Florida, under the supervision of DeSantis, if you're saying that Florida is able to eliminate DEI, which is pretty much opening the door for open discrimination, what is the NAACP, with its history of being the longest standing quote unquote black activist organization, what are you all doing to counter that or to even supervise to make sure that the black students don't go to Florida? Because what are we supposed to do? Black students are just supposed to, well, don't go to Florida, then it's going to be Texas, then it's going to be Arizona, then it's going to be this. And so we're just supposed to just go where we're accepted. No, you all, the NAACP, you all are supposed to be making sure that anywhere black people go, we're not discriminated against.
I think the question for me, and I'll pose it to you. So is the NAACP, are they trying to be segregationist, or they're trying to do a silent protest? Or I don't know, because here's the thing. If you're doing a silent protest, I kind of understand it. Like, okay, we're going to hurt Florida school system by not having our black athletes to go there until they go back and change the policies for DEI. But then if I'm an educated black student athlete and I know about DEI, it really hasn't helped black people, so is that even worth it? I digress. But are they trying to segregate black folk from going to school in Florida? I mean, you can look at it both ways.
Yeah, you can. DEI is like What are they going? The thing
I
is
just don't. I
that
just don't
if
trust
they
the
say they're
NAACP.
eliminating them, and if black students don't get accepted, then you couldn't reconsider. It's not your choice. If you accepted, you accepted.
Absolutely.
Why
I'm
would
not
if
going to
I was
stop free
accepted?
school.
Why would I turn it down?
I'm not going to stop anyone getting free schooling, especially a Foundation of Black America. I'm not going to stop them from getting free school. No way.
No.
I won't support that at all.
Mm-hmm. And if anything, what the NAACP should be doing is they should be saying, black students, if you do go to these Florida schools because of their recent policy changes, if you face any discrimination, if you feel like you're being targeted, you let us know and we will step in and handle that. That's what the
Absolutely.
NAACP should be doing.
Because this is basically saying tuck tail and run.
You really, yeah, that's what it is. That's what they're saying. They're saying, I mean, we're not going to do anything to solve the problem, but here's a heads up so you don't get into trouble. That's what they're saying.
Right. Because I can tell you, you got Georgia right there. They can pull some brothers, some sisters down there to reinforce with some help with the NAACP, but we know that unfortunately our civil rights organization has not been helpful for Black Americans here in this country. They have not been really helpful. They've been helpful for other folk. The Urban League, they've been helpful for other folk, but not Black folk.
Yeah, that's true. We're right here. We're continuing. It says, quote, this is in the letter. It says, quote, this is not about politics. This is not about politics, the letter read. It is about the protection of our community, the progression of our culture, and most of all, it's about your education and your future. What does the NAACP do to advance Black education and Black future?
It's so confusing because DEI is politics. It's political.
Mm-hmm.
It's political.
Yeah. So yeah.
Right. So I mean, I don't even understand when they say it's not politics. Again, we understand that this is a Coon-ran nationwide organization, and unfortunately, they might have done some work back in the day. They might have been a real organization to advance Black people, but they are not that today. They're not the same group. They're not the same people.
Yeah.
They're not built like that. Absolutely not.
I agree. For some people who might have this thing of looking back in the past, what's the term I'm thinking about? Nostalgia.
Okay.
Some people have nostalgia for the NAACP, and there's so many different branches. One or two might be cool and might do some good work, but the collective of the NAACP has completely changed. It's faltered. It's unhelpful. It's unsuccessful. It's trash. Okay.
I'm trying to think about an organization today or back then, excluding the Black Panther Party, not the new Black Panther Party, the Black Panther Party, and the Black Guerrilla Army, or Black Liberation Army. Outside of them, I don't really, and unfortunately, these organizations are gone.
Yeah.
You see that? NAACP, Urban League, I had a whole list of them. They're still here today, but none of the ones that was really fighting for Black liberation, opportunities for Black folk, they're not here today. Huh, interesting.
Yeah. That's true. That's a really good point. Finishing this off, it says, the letter was signed by NAACP National Board of Director Chairman Leon W. Wilson and NAACP President and CEO Derek Jackson. So, I mean, this goes all the way up to the top. Okay, the CEO and the chairman all the way up to the top. It says last year, Republican Florida Governor Ron DeSantis signed a bill prohibiting the use of state funds for any DEI program. The university, you said what?
I said it was about the money.
Yep. The University of Florida responded in March by closing the office of the chief diversity officer, eliminating 13 full-time DEI positions and 15 administrative appointments, and ending DEI-focused contracts with outside vendors. Other state school like North Florida. Oh, and okay, school, not other state schools like North Florida and Florida International also have shut down DEI programs. And I think,
I mean, I just would
we're
want to
gonna talk
know
about
how does that benefit? I mean, or how did that hurt black folk? That's all I really would want to know.
yeah,
I really want to know the percentage. Now, I'm pretty sure inside the DEI office, they always got to have black folk because they're making it a black thing. But outside of them, by them stopping DEI in Florida, how much has that hurt black folk? Do we see an increase in unemployment, or do we see the same number of unemployment? You see what I'm saying? I want to see the actual impact.
That's true. And to be very honest, I want to say this: if they are firing people, I want to see who exactly is being fired under DEI. I think that's a good question too, because if we
Good question.
already explained, DEI is not supposed to exclusively be about black people. So if you're going to shut down DEI programs, that means you should be firing Asians as well, or Hispanics. You should be firing folks from the LGBT community. You should be firing women, white women. So let's look and see exactly who is being targeted under the restrictions of DEI. I think that's another good question.
What about this? You just made me think about something. You was going down a list of people who they'd be firing. Now, the Afghani so-called refugees, when they came over, as well as we have some Afghani ones, and there was another group outside. We had Ukrainians to come over. Now, with the exception of the Ukrainian, but we look at the Afghanis. We look at, I did one of my other broadcasts, Afro, I talked about how Joe Biden, people say secretly, but it's a public program, but they flew over 320,000 migrants into America illegally under this program, right? It had all these stipulations. But here's my point. Afghanis are considered what to America?
Well, immigrants, or you mean racially?
Well, yeah, I mean, but you said immigrants, would they fall into a minority group?
Yeah.
Okay.
They would fall.
But racially, what does America label Afghanis?
Racially, they would be labeled as white.
Correct. According to the Census Bureau, people from North Africa and the Middle East and Europe are considered white. So they can essentially kill two birds with one stone and say, okay, these guys are fired. Where you guys from again? Okay, yeah, you're good. You're white. Solved.
That's true.
Because if anybody say, well, didn't you fire all the, the Hispanics or black folk? Right. And they're like, well, no, we still have minorities. We have Afghanis. And at the same time, they're considered white in America. So are they the minority? I'm just saying, I try to think about the way how they will think about it and how they get away with a lot of racism, right? Always, when they talk about black folk, you always hear two more people. You hear the black and brown, and you also hear Native Americans.
Yeah.
But when they talk about Native Americans, they never bring up black folk. When they talk about Hispanic folk, they never bring up black folk. Never.
That you make a great point. You make an incredibly great point. Also, I'm gonna finish this off. There's not really much left.
Okay.
Because we still have more information to cover. It says, quote, now this is still the letter that they're sending to the black students, the black student athletes. It says, quote, while it is our duty to spread awareness and encourage action around these egregious assaults, we also recognize that protests can come at a price, the letter read. The sad reality is, for many black student athletes, congregate sport may be their sole opportunity at achieving the upward mobility necessary to propel them into their rightful places in society. It's unclear how awareness of the debate over DEI might affect current or prospective student athletes who are considering powerhouses like Florida and Florida State, especially at a time when name, image, and likeness deals have become so integral to building rosters. But a growing campaign could hinder those schools' recruiting efforts. Okay. So, and that's another topic. A lot of the students now, that's been a very big conversation. A lot of the student athletes in college are getting paid for their likeness because the schools, the universities,
Oh yeah,
make a lot of money
NIL.
off of that.
Yeah.
So that's another aspect to the conversation as well. But that's not really what the topic is. So that might be a whole nother video, to be honest, because that it kind of goes into a whole nother subject, and that's something that can be discussed.
Right.
It says Florida great and pro football Hall of Famer Emmitt Smith asked minority, not saying black, minority athletes at his alma mater
Alma mater.
Yeah. Oh, that's two. Okay, that's one word together, right?
Right.
Okay. It says, quote, be aware and vocal about the decision. Johnson, and they're talking about the CEO of the NAACP, Johnson took it a step further Monday. Quote, Florida's rampant anti-black policies are a direct threat to the advancement of our young people and their ability to compete in a global economy. Johnson said in a statement, diversity, equity, and inclusion are paramount to ensuring equitable and effective educational outcomes. Quote, the value black and other college athletes bring to large universities is unmatched. If these institutions are unable to completely invest in those athletes, it's time they take their talents elsewhere. And that's the end of that.
Yeah, can you go back really quickly?
Okay. To this part?
Yeah, because now first, I don't know why Emmitt Smith is speaking up for everybody, but what they're doing here is they just stated that these are anti-black policies. How these are anti-black policies? And the only reason why I say that is because if we know statistically that DEI hasn't truly benefited Black Americans, and then that DEI includes everybody except white men, then how is it anti-black policy? But see, I always feel like we're being the sacrificial lamb to make it a black issue. Then what happens? Black folk get out on the street, protesting, saying things online, making videos, and DEI is just not about us. And matter of fact, it hasn't helped us. It helped more Asians and Hispanics than it ever helped black. But we'll be the sacrificial lambs to go run with the wand, trying to get things changed. And when things get changed, it get changed for other groups constantly over and over again.
And you make a very, very good point, because there's like the anti-black is anti, like, even when they talk about, and I can get this off the screen, even when they talk about voting rights, and then we're all like, hold on now, well, black people, you guys already, the history of the voting rights, you all have to understand this. So they get black people to be on the front lines for something that ultimately is going to propel and have another group of people leapfrog above us. So that's really what there is with DEI, because if you can't provide any data and statistics that DEI mainly or primarily benefits black people or puts black people ahead, everybody else is actually leapfrogged ahead of black people, the same way affirmative action was, which is why when affirmative action was ruled down, when the Supreme Court made their ruling on affirmative action, you saw black people like, oh, I mean, it is what it is. You know what I'm saying? And they didn't.
It makes me think about, going back to your point about voting rights, and somehow they have convinced black folk that we're still need to fight for voting rights.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like this is a ploy, and someone may state that this is conjecture, and I'm stretching, that if we don't have voter ID laws, this has nothing about being conservative or liberal or progressive or moderate. It doesn't. Because think about everything you do, Afro. You need a freaking ID.
Yeah.
But you're telling me the most powerful country in the world, and it's already been proven in the last 3 months, we had 1 million illegal immigrants inside the country. So you tell me the most powerful country in the world doesn't require identification when you're voting for the most powerful position in the world? So if we're fighting for voting rights to eliminate or to ban voter ID laws where Tom, Dick, or Harry, or Jerome, Derek, and Mike, or Hector Gomez, can just go up there and vote, then that's democracy as we know it. Since Charlemagne won't call out things like that, that's democracy as we know it.
Yeah.
And anybody can vote. Anybody. You don't need an ID. What's your name? Oh, okay, cool. Go ahead. Who you voting for? I'm gonna vote for Joe Biden. That's what I'm saying. It's ridiculous
good
to
accent,
me.
by the way. It's a good accent. But you make a really good point, because let's think about this, because it all ties in, family. It all ties in. Let's think about this. The black people have been voting in unfortunately for the Democrats for generations. All right.
Good point.
Black people have been voting for generations. Only recently, because of the surge in illegal immigration that we've been seeing over the last few, it's been a little more than just Biden, but over the last few years or so, only recently have we been saying, oh, hold on, we need more voting rights because the IDs are a problem. So you mean when Bill Clinton was running, IDs were a problem? When Bush was running, IDs weren't a problem? When Obama was running, both times IDs weren't a problem for the black community. Now, all of a sudden, now IDs are a problem for the black community, when all of these times, and then all of the voting, the midterms in between, IDs have never, ever been a problem. That's never been a problem. Now, all of a sudden, IDs are a problem for the black community. No, that's just not true. It doesn't add up. It doesn't.
They were saying that a lot of elderly black folk didn't have IDs. And I'm like, no, that's a lie. They have ID. It may be expired, but they have ID. You get what I'm saying? So I don't really like the whole voting rights. To stop it. I voted in Texas and I had no issues. I voted in DC, where I'm originally from, had no issues. I never had issues voting. So no one has stopped. You're black, so what we're going to do here is we're going to stop you right here. Let's see your ID. All right, go in there and vote then. Like, never. Like, yeah. I think they're just trying to. I don't. We either be liberals or conservatives, man. They always have an angle about the way they want to have and control the power that we will give them, we either be consciously or subconsciously.
Yeah, that's very true. Now, you have some statistics, speaking of like the Hispanics and all that stuff. You have some more information about the DEI.
Let me pop that up for you very quickly then. There you go.
All right, there we go.
Yeah, it states here, and this is from the Harvard Business Review again, the proportion of managers at U.S. commercial banks who were Hispanic rose from 4.7 to 5.7 between 2003 and 2014, while white women and black men dropped. White women 39 to 35 and black men 2.5 to 2.3. It goes on to say that the bottom black men in management increased just slightly from 3% to 3.3. From 85 to 2014, but white women outnumbered them, of course, by 4%. So the big swings here you see in the discrepancy is that when you correlate the number of illegal immigrants, let's state back from even Obama, he had a lot of illegal immigrants but he also deported the most people. A lot of people don't know that either. But between that time, we've had millions and millions of immigrants inside the country, whether it be legal or illegal, and a lot of them have been Hispanic. And during that time frame, Black men have been losing jobs while they had a whole percent increase, or some people may look at it 10%, but 1% increase. And those numbers are very significant when you're dealing with the number of population and demographics they have in the country versus us. We're talking about 0.2% from 2.5 to 3% versus they went up an entire percent. And that could be largely depending on the group of people we're talking about. But yeah, the numbers don't lie when you correlate DEI, immigrants inside the country of a Hispanic nature, illegally or legal, and how they essentially decrease the number of Black folk that have been working in those same fields.
So all of this stuff is a political agenda. All of this from start to finish.
It has to be.
And the immigrants, when we say that the immigration problem is going to be the erasure of foundational Black Americans, this is exactly what we're talking about. This is what we mean when we say this. This is what the data is showing us. We're not making this up. This isn't a rumor. This isn't even conjecture. This is what the data, we're looking at the data. This is what the data is showing us.
And another thing is, illegal immigration has been a problem much longer than what we have been really giving it notice and coverage. It's been a problem for a very long time. When you look at the amount of immigrants that's coming inside the country now, for a long time, everybody was like, oh, Mexican. It's all those countries, right? It's all of the Central American countries, Colombia, Guatemala, Costa Rica, Ecuador. They stated how Brazilians are coming up as well. And not only that, you have Haitians, right? Then I think it was maybe a couple of videos ago, I was talking about they had 24,000 Chinese illegal immigrants come through southern of the border through Mexico in like 3 or 4 months. 24,000 Chinese. And prior to that, they was having large Indians to come over to America illegally. And when you look at the Asian community as a whole, what jobs do you think they're going to get?
They're going to be in those customer support techie jobs and stuff like that.
They're going to be in tech, and they're going to be in there building their own businesses. And somehow, coming through illegally, they're going to still be placed in front of foundational Black Americans, because we see all the support that Hispanics are getting. We see all the support that the Asians that are coming, and we're talking about illegals here, right? We're talking about undocumented, how they come inside the country illegally, and they're receiving benefits over us. And unfortunately, it had to take large caravans and them being dropped off in Black communities for Black folk to really wake up about a lot of things. Because people that we've never heard speak a certain language are now speaking Black empowerment. It had to take thousands, hundreds of thousands of people in the country illegally and being dropped off, and the resources in those Black neighborhoods being taken away from them to house people who don't even supposed to be here. Boy, we got to wake up sooner.
Yeah, that's true. That's very true. So this is why it's so very important for us to cover information like this, because all of this stuff ties in. We'll talk about illegal immigration and then we'll talk about DEI, but a lot of people, and I'm glad that we are able to be here and do this, a lot of people are not making the connections that they are intertwined with each other. Because a lot of these Hispanics, especially the ones that they will be promoting, like for instance, DeSantis is a Hispanic name.
Good point.
DeSantis is a Hispanic name, and you see the anti-Blackness in them. So they will choose DeSantis, Zimmerman. Zimmerman was in Florida too. We have to remember these facts. So they'll cherry pick the most anti-Black Hispanics possible, and they'll put them in the best roles, the best position. They'll assign them the best positions and the best roles and all of that. And then they'll use a lot of the other ones as cheap labor and stuff like that. The darker skin ones, they'll
Of
use
course.
them on their farms as cheap labor and stuff. And that's already been exposed. So, and they'll do this because this is how they can get their workforce, and they can supplement FBA workforce.
Absolutely.
So it's a very nefarious plan. It's very nefarious. With
It's well thought out.
DEI, they can just openly discriminate against Black people. Like, oh no, that's a DEI position, and we don't do that over here anymore.
Anything dealing with devastation and being devious is well thought out when it comes to white supremacy. Don't think there are no fools or stupid. There, some plans that they have are well thought out, and we have to really analyze and break down things and catch it, because if we don't, we're more of us who are uninformed will be hurt if we don't.
Yes, you're absolutely correct. I think we did a great thing about this, and there's so many, as we were discussing this, it's so many different subjects. I actually want to maybe do another one sooner about the student athletes, because I don't know if that's really a conversation that a lot of people have really touched up on as much as it needs to, because really the student athletes, the way the system is working, the millions of dollars that are being made off their likeness, off their performance, off of all of that, the jersey, they say, all of that, the school and university and the state even gets off of that money. They're starting to get a small percentage of that, and I think that that's something that we can dive into.
Definitely. That'd be a good topic.
Yeah. So, in case you guys didn't know, this is our brother Black Logic. Black Logic, do you have any concluding statements about this subject?
You know, brother, I think we did a really in-depth job, especially breaking down the analytics of things and giving definitions. I have no more to add.
Okay. Well, where can people find you?
Oh, they can find me on my YouTube channel, Black Logic, as well as TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Black Zero. And that's pretty much it. Yeah.
All right. Thank you very much. And the links to that will be in the description below, so you guys can just click on that and follow him on his social media.
Oh, thank you, brother. I appreciate that.
Oh, absolutely. No problem. Absolutely. Well, thank you very much. And we will be seeing our good brother Black Logic again.
Thank you, brother. I appreciate it.
You're welcome.